DiJonai Carrington circled August 23rd like it was the night everything would finally be settled. She had a history with the Indiana Fever, she had a history with Sophie Cunningham, and she had made sure people knew that August 23rd mattered. But when that night finally arrived, Caitlin Clark didn't just beat her, she turned Carrington's revenge game into one of the biggest performances of her career. 37 points, 10 assists, 8 three-pointers, and a 113-90 Fever win that sent Chicago out of the playoff race. But here's what makes this story so much more interesting. Carrington wasn't just playing against Indiana, she was playing against the expectations she had created herself. Because once you tell everyone that a certain night is going to be your revenge, you better be ready for everyone to watch what happens next. And on August 23rd, everyone was watching. To understand why this game became so personal, we have to go back. The story started earlier in the season when Indiana and Chicago were involved in a heated matchup. Sophie Cunningham was hit by DiJonai Carrington with a flagrant foul that resulted in Carrington's ejection. The incident immediately became controversial, but it didn't end when Carrington left the court. Carrington later posted on social media, including the phrase "white privilege," while also pointing toward the August 23rd rematch. Contemporary coverage described the post as a signal that she intended to get some form of revenge in the rematch. Content reference always cite Hardness Index 2. And that's when this stopped feeling like just another game. Because now there was a date, August 23rd, the rematch. Fans knew it, the players knew it, and Carrington had made sure everyone else knew it too. So when the Fever and Sky finally met again, the cameras weren't simply watching a basketball game, they were watching to see whether Carrington could actually back up the story she had created. And from the opening minutes, the physicality was there. Carrington was defending Caitlin Clark. Clark was trying to create space. There were bumps, there was contact. There were moments where the tension between the two was impossible to miss. At one point, after Clark knocked down a shot, Carrington and Clark exchanged words on the court. That moment quickly became part of the bigger story, because now the rivalry wasn't something happening on social media, it was happening directly in front of the cameras. But then, Caitlin Clark started doing something Carrington couldn't control. She started making shots. And not just easy shots, deep shots, difficult shots, shots with defenders closing toward her, shots coming out of movement, step-backs, pull-ups. And eventually, it became clear that this wasn't going to be an ordinary night for Clark. The first warning came quickly. Clark kept finding open spaces. Then came another three, then another. And suddenly the player who had been at the center of Carrington's revenge story was becoming the biggest problem on the floor. But here's the part that makes the result even crazier. Chicago had prepared for Clark. They knew where she wanted to go. They knew what kind of shot she liked. They knew she could destroy a defense from deep, and it didn't matter. Clark kept finding a way. By the end of the night, she had hit 8 three-pointers, a new career high. She finished with 37 points and 10 assists, and the Indiana Fever walked away with a 113-90 victory. But the number 8 is only part of the story, because those 8 threes weren't just empty shooting numbers. They came while Clark was being guarded by the same player who had spent weeks building up this rematch. And one of those threes became especially memorable. Clark hit a step-back three while Carrington was directly involved in the defensive sequence. There was a reaction, there were words exchanged, and suddenly, the entire meaning of the game was sitting in one moment. Carrington had promised a response. Clark answered with another three. But there was still another problem for Chicago. Caitlin Clark wasn't doing this alone. Kelsey Mitchell was dominating too. Mitchell scored 30 points, including 23 in the second half, while Clark and Mitchell combined to give Indiana the kind of backcourt performance Chicago simply couldn't match. Content. Reference, OE site. Index of 4. Indiana eventually hit 18 three-pointers, a franchise record. That means Chicago wasn't dealing with one superstar, it was dealing with an entire offense that had caught fire. Content reference, OE site, Hugh Cole. Index FEEP. And this is where Carrington's revenge story began falling apart. Because even if you wanted to make the game personal, basketball still requires you to stop everyone. You can't spend the entire night focused on Caitlin Clark and expect the other players to disappear.